Hello, everybody. Welcome to Chuck Furuya Uncorked. Joining us on this episode is the Gram Sam, Ariana Suchia, and our very special guest, Mr. Richard Betts.
Woo!
One of the most brilliant wine minds and active wine minds I've met in all these years of being in the industry.
Absolutely.
First time I heard of him, he was the wine guru at the inn at Little. What's it called?
The Little Nell.
Little Nell in Aspen, Colorado.
Yeah.
And, you know, he had all these wine projects since then that, including Betts and Shoal, I should say, My Essential Rosé, My Essential Red. You helped launch Scarpetta, if I'm not, and also Sombra Mezcal and Astral Tequila. So you've been a very busy man.
I'm a busy guy, but it keeps me out of trouble, Chuck.
And Ariana, in case you didn't know, back then Betts and Shoal was Betts and Shoal. Dennis Scholl was quite the progressive wine project. You know, it featured Shiraz from Australia, Grenache from Australia, Syrah and Roussanne Marsanne or Marsanne Roussanne from Hermitage Hill, and Jean-Louis Chave in the northern road of France. So it was a very comprehensive project.
And Syrah with Randy Lewis at the same time.
Yeah.
Wow. So you love Australia, though. That's like, where did you fall in love with Australia? Like, at what point?
It wasn't an immediate love affair. And not that I saw it and sniffed at it. That wasn't it at all. I had an amazing job at the Little Nell. And, you know, if you go back at this point, 20 years, that's a long time.
Yeah.
And the fine wine world was, developed, but a whole lot smaller than it is today. And what that means is I drank everything great. And I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah.
And I understand how much harder it is today to gain context because there's just such a fervor for these wines. They've become astronomically expensive. It didn't used to be that way, it's depressing because, everybody should have the opportunity to taste these things.
To taste great wine,
exactly. So I was drinking all this very fancy French wine that that was somehow less fancy back then. And I fell in love with a particular Grenache. And, I just decided, okay, so I passed Master Sommelier exam and thought, well, it's one thing to read about, another thing to make it. So let's get dirty and make it.
Yeah.
And I always approach what I want to do by thinking about, what do I love? If you don't love it and you don't love it, I have to drink it all. I'm really good at that. But but if I'm going to do that, I'm going to make what I like. And I think that there are any number of ways to think about, how do you decide what wine you want to make, or how to actually even make wine. And you can go to school for that, and that's fine. You can be an apprentice, and that's fine. You can be a sommelier, and that's fine. The thing about approaching it the way I approached it, which is from the point of view of the sommelier, is that you start with, I love that. Right?
Oh,
I
see.
And how did that become that? So
the wonder, the curiosity behind it.
Yeah. And you don't start with a reaction of, yeast eat sugar and make alcohol and carbon dioxide. We can figure that out. And I had already been to graduate school for hydrogeology, which is another thing. And having a grasp scientific method is important. But for me, as I'm terrible at things I don't love. So approaching it from this direction was perfect for me. I love, pick whatever wine that is. I love this wine. And then you just unknit the sweater and why is it the way it is? Right?
How did this come to be?
Exactly. Yeah. How did this come to be? And so at that point, Pinot Noir was and remains an overindulged princess. People plant in places it shouldn't be. They do all kinds of things with it. And obviously there are many great examples of it, and there are a bunch of boring examples of it. And I didn't think I had anything to add. This is a very long answer to your question.
No, I love it. Yeah.
I didn't think I had anything to add to that conversation, and you don't necessarily just rock up in Von Romane and say, "What up? I'm here. Let's make some wine," because that's not how the world works. But I don't think that Pinot Noir doesn't have a monopoly on these Pinot sensibilities, things that are soft, seductive,
floral,
all these things, right?
Beautiful
sensual,
nose,
full of allure. In the right instances, Sangiovese can do that. Nebbiolo can do that. They don't all do that, just like all Pinot Noir doesn't do it. But Sangiovese, Nebbiolo, they're great examples. Maybe Carignan, maybe Sanso. But definitely Grenache has that opportunity. And Grenache can also look like the opposite of that. There are so many pieces to making a wine. It's like a Rubik's Cube with 1,000 faces. And if you don't get it exactly right, well, it's not going to be pretty. So Grenache was what really grabbed me in this one particular wine that I'm referencing. Is like, wow, how does that look so much like Pinot Noir? And, I was blind tasting a lot at that time. And it's like, I kept mistaking this one particular wine. This is Burgundy. And I think I'm pretty good at that game.
Yeah.
And to keep getting fooled is like, oh, all right. Well, there's really something there. There's something there. And I like that. And I can't go make Burgundy, but maybe I can make something like this. So we unknit that sweater. That sweater is called Chateau Reyes. And now, that's no secret. Like everybody gets it. It's expensive now. And that's too bad. And, they're a beguiling family these days. And that's fine too. But, the whole point is that you figure out like how did it become what it was, and in a nutshell, it was Grenache grown in sand.
Which is really important for obviously Suzette, right?
Exactly.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And so I went on this.
But let me say this: the first Grenache you made under Betts and Scholl wasn't sand, was it?
No, it was sand.
Was it?
It was.
Oh.
Yep. Yeah.
Huh. That's something new.
The OG.
Betts and Scholl, he made. You also made a Chronique or something like that, right?
I did. Yes. Yeah. We made
so
two
he
Grenache.
made the first wine out was a Grenache from Australia, and I think Trevor Jones helped you with that, or no?
No, Trevor helped me with the Riesling.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, he's a great.
But the
winemaker.
Grenache was the Betts and Scholl Grenache was something eye-catching, and the thing that we have to understand is it's very, very hard, in my opinion, to find a Grenache that's mainly 90-something% Grenache that's interesting. Far too often you have cherry, lush, ripe, opulent, etc., higher alcohol, hollow in the middle. That's why you see so many GSMs, blends with Syrah and Mourvèdre inside. So the task of making something that could have
Its best
Pinot Noir
expression.
esqueness in terms of umami and completeness and alluring and thing is Grenache is the grape to do it with, in my opinion. It's possible, but they're far and few in between. Then along came this Betts and Scholl Grenache, and then there was several sub versions of that afterwards, and then many years later, now we fast forward to this.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so it's been an evolution of us watching. I mean, you have to understand. For a while there, he was chasing Syrah. So you see Black Betty, you see something from Australia, you see something from the Lewis family. Although, even though they're Napa Valley, wasn't the Lewis family more Sonoma grapes?
It's Hudson, the Napa side. The Napa side.
Carneros.
Yeah.
And then he had Hermitage, Jean-Louis Chauve, parcels that he owned, as well as parcels that he got grapes from. And he made the wine for Richard, both the Blanc and the Rouge. And it was, gosh, off the top of my head, I remember having the 01 Blanc. Maybe the Hermitage Rouge was 2000?
2001 was the first vintage.
2001. So those wines are really good. So he was exploring it from 3 different places and 3 different takes on what Syrah can be. But with the Grenache, he kind of like settled in on one kind of look.
Yeah, I mean, it was this search for sand, right? You unknit the sweater and you figure out what kind of yarn you need.
Because you're like, okay, I'm in love with this florality, this Pinot-esque type thing that's not Pinot. Where is it coming from? Chateau Reyes sand. Where can I find sand? Australia, right?
But it wasn't like, oh, we go from here to there. It's like, who are Reyes's neighbors? Like Vaudieu.
Oh, I see.
Vaudieu is an estate that is adjacent to them and has some sand. And, that whatever, there's no opportunity there for a guy like me. So we looked around the rest of the south of France, looked in Spain, looked in Sardinia.
Okay.
All right.
For kind of now stuff.
Next stop is California. Spoke to a prominent California winemaker. This is 2003 at this point. And he was amazing. He said, "Look, Richard, I'd love to have you here carrying the flag with us.
Yeah.
Grenache.
Championing Grenache. Yeah.
But I would do you a disservice if I said, come here and do that, because we make Grenache. Thankfully, we make other things, but right now we don't know where the sweet spot is. So one year we'll get 8 tons to the acre from our vineyard, and 1 year we'll get half a ton to the acre. And if I had to make my living based on Grenache, I'd be broke.
Yeah.
So hearing what you're looking for, Richard, you should keep going. And so the last stop on the tour was Australia. And I got there and it was amazing. And so we work in the Barossa Valley. The Barossa Valley is a very diverse place. And most of it is this heavy red biscuit clay. And it makes these, for me, kind of outsized, heavy, ponderous things that I don't like to drink personally.
And
viscous,
Yeah. But there's one little corner called Vinevale, which is up against the Barossa Ranges. And it's basically a sandy alluvial fan. And so there's ancient Grenache, not much of it, but there's some. And we're like, okay, this is the place. And at that time, if you wanted to make Shiraz there, I didn't start with Shiraz. I started with Grenache, actually. And eventually we added a little Shiraz just for sport. But at that point, Robert Parker mattered a lot. And everyone was making these like outsized, super duper overdone things.
Getting the Parker points. Yep.
Exactly.
And you meant Betts and Scholes was first Grenache.
Betts and Scholes started as Grenache.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then Black Betty, which was one of our wines, came.
That was the last one,
4
was
years
it?
later.
Shaw was next. Then Lewis
Randy.
Sellers was next.
Yeah, and then little Shiraz. Yeah. Right. But at that time, everybody, if you were a winemaker, everybody wanted Shiraz. So they would go to a grower. This is actually an interesting thing on your GSM theory, but they would go to a grower, and generally the growers have owned the vineyards forever, and they have what's called the Barossa fruit salad. So their grandparents planted Frontignac and Grenache and Viognier and some Chardonnay and all these things because they didn't know what was going to happen, 80 or 150 years ago.
Let's hedge our bets a little bit.
Exactly. And so people, the Shiraz craze is on. So people are going to say, hey, grower so-and-so, I want to buy your Shiraz. And they say, yeah, great. It's $10,000 a ton. And you have to take the Grenache too. And so then, so-and-so winemakers like, this sucks, beep, beep, beep. Can't say all these things on. But eventually they capitulated because they wanted Syrah, they would take the Grenache. And so what would happen is they would perpetuate this myth that Grenache is, as the Australians say, lolly water. And they say it has no color, has no flavor, and there's a million ways to pick that apart because
lolly water, wow.
So they would take the Grenache and they would pick it first to get it out of the way and take it in the winery and make wine. And then, get ready for their money ball, which was the Shiraz.
They weren't trying to do it justice as its own varietal.
Yeah, no, not at all. But they would get out of the way, and then they'd make the Shiraz, which is what they cared about. But in reality, they've totally screwed that up because physiologically, the Grenache ripens after the Shiraz. So if it ripens after the Shiraz, but you're going to pick it before the Shiraz and have time to make it into wine, you're picking it almost 2 months too early. So it only perpetuates the myth. So this whole... Pardon me, can I say BS? Is that allowed? This whole BS about this GSM thing and it's an homage to Chateauneuf, that's a big lie. We made all this crappy Grenache and so we have to add something to it so we can sell this garbage. And so that's how the GSM is born. And so Grenache is a chameleon. It's just like Sangiovese is a chameleon. You add some, like Tignanello is like 95%, Sangiovese. Well, it looks like Napa Cab to me. You wouldn't even know it's Italian. Sorry, Antonaris. But the point is that you add these other things to Grenache, and then it doesn't look like it's it's gross.
It's not Grenache anymore.
It's not, and that's like. Look, everyone gets their point of view in winemaking, and that's fine. But to me, that's ultimately it's a shame and boring.
Yeah,
but it's good because now we have a niche that you can explore and show people what can be.
Yeah, if they want to come along, the party's fun.
The question I would like to refocus on then is what do you see? What do you feel? I mean, what is it that draws you to Grenache and Sand? Forget Rayas for a second. What is it?
Yeah, totally.
Let's talk about, I know you've commented about perfume and alluringness and stuff like that, so maybe you can tell the readers why this wine is this wine. Well, what's the Sand deal?
Yeah, so what Sand does, it gives and it takes. It takes color, and I'm fine with that. So question for everyone, like, do you smell color or do you taste color?
Exactly.
Yeah, so why do we care about colors?
Exactly.
This is something it was so aggravating.
Exactly.
To like, okay, you're a host, you're trying to be nice. You go to the table, and they've ordered some wine.
Yeah.
You pour a glass, and they pick it up and like, oh, this is gonna be great because they're looking at it, and you're just like, well,
how could you tell?
Yeah. How can you tell? Like, just because it's dark doesn't mean it's good. It means it came from a dark-skinned grape varietal. That's nothing to do with anything else. So, one of the myths I am just most ambitious about dispelling is, color doesn't equal quality or flavor or anything. So sand takes color, which then makes our jobs a little harder if you're trying to convert people and bring them over to this, this thing that matters so much. But what happens when you plant in sand or grow in sand is that you lose the color, but what you gain are all the high-toned aromatics. This is where all the sex appeal exists.
Yeah.
So when I smell and taste wine, I think about it like the musical register. The bass lives down here. The mezzo's here. There's an alto and a soprano. And the bass is easy. Like you just overripe things live down here, and it's just kind of ponderous and whatever, and just like it's like frosting or chocolate syrup or something. Who cares?
Yeah.
If you do a little bit better work and maybe it's not completely overripe, you get to the mezzo. But getting to that alto and soprano sex appeal, that takes
having the harmony of that. Yeah.
That takes really special circumstances, and that's what the sand gives you. And so, I mean, we tried that. I told you I went to graduate school for science, so I tend to be really rigorous about isolating variables and thinking about this process. And I'm a big believer in the mystery of wine first and foremost. I'm also, smart enough to understand, or maybe I've had it beaten to my head enough to know that treat everything the same, but just change one thing, and then you actually can learn something, right? So every year with Betts and Scholl, we were working with 4, 5, 6 different vineyards for Grenache, but I'd always take one new one. It's like, what is this? What is
this variable we're going to work with?
What am I learning here? And so we tested the clay thing, and you do it on clay, and it's the darkest wine. It's the most boring and dumb. So declassify that, get rid of it.
It's
sell
the
it somewhere
basic
else.
B wine.
Exactly. Yeah. Nobody cares. So
yeah.
But when you prove it to yourself, then it's truth. So that's what sand gives is allure and sex appeal, and it makes Grenache behave like the warm climate analogy of Pinot Noir.
If I can add to that, because I'm really into sand right now, is it also can create civility. Limestone creates severity in a lot of cases.
Oh, I like this.
Sand, because it's low nutrient and it drains.
Yeah.
It makes, you can still create minerality, but it's more civil. It's more
approachable.
Yeah.
No, it's not only approachable, it's just more sheer. It's not severe. There's a difference. Limestone.
It doesn't hurt.
You're talking about the edges, right?
Yeah. So that's why if you try Carignan de Sulcis from southern Sardinia, you'll see Grenache. If you look at some of the Chardonnays out of Santa Barbara, even the Pinot Noirs, where these sandy vineyards are, look how much more like Gold Coast Vineyard.
Okay.
It's not Grand Cru by any means, but the Pinots are so civil and so sensible and so elegant and sheer, as opposed to structured and flamboyant and showy. And at the end of the day, they're more delicious. It can also give deliciousness if the guy knows what the hell, or her knows what they're doing, and in creating something that's more fragile, more civil, more sensible, especially at the dinner table. That's what sand can do, and see, even you look at the Loire Valley, those banks that are closest to the Loire Valley to the Loire River, it's probably more sand. And those a little farther away is eroded, so you have limestone showing, so those vineyards. So if you look at the Chenin Blanc or Cabernet Franc that's grown in the limestone, it's more severe. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just one style. But if you look at those that are grown in the more sandy soils, it's more gentle, it's more civil, and it's more pleasurable upon your first sip, especially when it's young. So sand is a really interesting soil that I think needs to be explored more, whether it's Grenache or other grapes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like your thinking.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. So anyway, this is Warren Shawn. I can't take credit for finding this wine. He has a strong relationship with Warren Shawn. And Warren one day just popped this wine open to me and gave it to me blind. And I had no idea that what Richard was doing at this point. I always lived in a cave. And Warren said, you got to try this wine. So I tried. I go, holy shit. I was looking at the color, and I immediately thought Pinot Noir.
Oh yeah.
And then when I smelled it, I was going, wow, this thing is so lovely. But the crazy thing, and let me just finish. When I tasted it, it was so gentle and so what's the word? Alluring, but what's the other word I like to use? It's very soothing, and it's just it just flows so deliciously, and it's very
well, it's also interesting,
Oh, well, that's the second part. I'm just saying texturally, this is something very special. But the main crazy thing for me when I found out what wine it was, this wine has savoriness in addition to it all. So there's many, many different wines that are fruit driven, and you get this, or they're oak driven, and you get this, or they're whole cluster, and you get this, or they're and this, or they're barrel fermented, whatever. And it creates different manifestations in a wine, right? But to have savoriness like this, still with wonderful texture and, just alluring, it's just seductive in its texture. That's something special. And savoriness is actually what makes it go with this many different kinds of foods. People think it's body, acid, tannins. Yes, that may be true. But savoriness also works,
Well, for me, Suzette was a huge tool to have in my arsenal at Alan Wong's, working the floor as a somm, because it's light, like you said, where it's going to have that versatility. So a lot of people are coming in and they're like, oh, we're Pinot drinkers, but we want to try something different, and then our food is not meant for the steaks, hearty cab type. We're not a steakhouse, so we have a huge range of different, like lighter proteins and things like that. And for me, you're a Pinot drinker that wants to try something different. Here we go. Let's try this. So that was a really, really cool thing. And then you build that relationship with the customer, because most clientele are like, what's Grenache?
Yeah.
And then you introduce them to that and they're like, oh, there's a whole world outside of Pinot and Cab that I didn't know about, like these in-betweener things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is one of a kind Grenache, though. Please
yeah,
understand,
absolutely.
not all Grenache is created equal. And so this is one of a kind. So if you have this wine, and I encourage you to, I bought this bottle at Arfield Wine Company in Kailua. Again, I'm not trying to make a commercial statement. It's just, if someone is carrying a wine like this, you all should know about it, because it's worth the trek over there. We need to applaud these stores that are carrying this quality of wine. And this wine was $52 at the store.
So we're drinking the Suzette, and this is the Grenache, and it's under an approach to relaxation, correct?
Yep.
Awesome.
So just to give you some background on this wine, correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, the 14 and the 15 were from vineyards that had 80 to 85-year-old vines. And they're own rooted because they're planted in sand. And you see, depending on the vintage, somewhere between 20 and 35% whole cluster fermentation, which helps to give it savoriness, give it framing, et cetera, without taking away from the loveliness of the wine. You don't want to use too much stems in the case of a wine like this thing. Then it's aged in old French oak for like 12 months. Now, with the 2016 vintage, and especially 17 moving forward, the game has changed because they bought a vineyard, Riza.
We gave it our middle names.
Yeah.
We have a shared middle name.
That's
my wife,
cool.
Carla. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
RZA.
that.
Riza.
So it's right down the road.
Like the Riza, the Jizza, the old dirty bastard. Inspector Deck, Method Man. I'm actually a gigantic Wu-Tang fan. Have drunk mezcal on Method Man's bus. Seen him dozens of times. This is all true.
That's awesome.
But Carla's maiden name was Razuski.
Yeah, she was saying it's a Polish maiden name, right? Yeah.
So, and some of her friends used to call her Riza. And so when we got married, she's like, "Oh, I'll take your last name."
Polish. I thought she was polished.
She's both.
She's both.
Yeah. So she wanted to change her last name because she was sick of spelling it RZESEWSK. She's like, I'm ready to take your name. I'm a million times a day.
Yeah, she just wants bets. Yeah.
And I said, well, I'll change mine too. Why don't we just take Riza and make that our middle names, and Bets will be our last names. And
what? Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah, it was wonderful and a lot of work. If you want to, you can change your last name when you get married. But if you want to change any other name, you have to notify the FBI. You have to notify your local sheriff's office. You have got to give fingerprints in both directions. You have to take out an ad in the newspaper and say, I'm changing my name because, who reads the newspaper anymore? But the real thing.
Wow.
In case you owe anyone a debt,
this is notice.
They can find you.
Like public service announcement, I'm changing my name.
10 days in a row.
10 days.
It costs like $2 to do it. But
that's also funny.
Yeah, it's insane. So anyways, after all that, we are now Carla Rizabetz and Richard Rizabetz. And we bought this.
I'd say it's worth it.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
worth it. Yeah, I like that.
So this vineyard is right down the road from where you got the other?
Yeah, and we were going to name it the Riza Ringaloo. I'm just messing around. Sorry. Australians give their vineyards weird names. No, so it's literally about a kilometer from where we make the wine at Rusden. They're just the greatest hosts, and Christian's my brother. I love the entire Canute family. They're very special and mean a lot to me. So their winery is across the street from the vineyard we use in 14 and 15, which is owned by a guy named David Neldner. Of course, he lives on Neldner Road because his grandparents settled the valley, planted a fruit salad. David wants to be an artist, so he doesn't do anything in the vineyard. And like the grass is as tall as the vines. It's like the grass is like 2.5, 3 feet tall in a wet vineyard. You know, like the rabbit holes like 2 feet deep and snakes and a million spiders. And it's way beyond biodynamic. It's feral. And if you want, if you want to really up your wine game, drink feral vineyard wine.
So what feral means to him is essentially they prune it.
They don't.
And they harvest it.
Yeah, no, they do prune it. They prune it and they harvest it, exactly.
That's it.
Which is interesting, but over time the vines get pushed out by the weeds, and so now 100-year-old vines are dying, and that's a shame. So you have to do a little bit of work.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that if you look at the vines, I think I read somewhere that they were once trained, but because they're essentially left alone, they've kind of moved into more bush vines.
So this is our vineyard. So our vineyard is a kilometer from this wild vineyard, and we actually do more than all the work. We all do all the work and then some. So in 2017, we have time for like a 3-minute story.
Yeah,
it's kind
for
of crazy.
sure. Yeah.
So 2017, we're there. We live at the winery, which is it's the old family house, and the winery's outside under the sun, the moon, the stars, wind, rain, all that stuff. And so Carla and I are there. We've been here like 5 days or something, but we haven't tasted the wines we made yet in 2016. And that's always like one of the great choices. You make something, you put it in a barrel, you fly away from Australia, you go home, you live your life, you fly a million other places. When you get back there, all you want to do is like run into the barrel shed and taste what you made.
What happened?
Yeah, where's my baby? And so this morning, we have a minute, we get up, go taste the wines we made in 2016. And we've made them from what we think are 2 vineyards. Turns out it's still 2 vineyards, but not the 2 we imagined. The first one is this feral vineyard from across the street, and it's lovely. And the second is from a grower who will remain nameless for the sake of privacy, who I used to buy grapes from for the chronic, as you mentioned earlier. Yeah. And we went and I said, "Hey, Mr. So-and-so, we want to grow a little bit. Can we buy some grapes?" This is in 2016. He's like, "Yeah, you can buy some grapes. No problem." So we get there for harvest 2016. We walk the vines and everything looks really good. Let's pick in 2 days' time. And the way it works in the Barossa is okay, you tell them to pick. They pick in the morning. They deliver it to you in their picking bins. We process out of their picking bins and we deliver their bins back to them. That's just the way the valley works. So the grapes show up in 2016. We make the wine, and everything's really encouraging. We put it in a barrel, and now 5 days into our 2017 trip, we get the chance to taste. We go out to the shed and we taste this wine, and it's like, wow, that's like so special. We're so excited. This is amazing. And then we go out to do the morning pump overs, which literally you walk out of the shed, you walk into the winery and to do the pump overs, and this guy drives his truck right into the winery, not like into the wall, but just drives right in, parks, gets out, and he's a big man. I'm 6'1", he's probably like 6'5", and has at least 80 pounds on me. He says, "Where's Richard and Carla?" And I'm just like
I don't know.
Yeah, and all those things go through your head in like a split second, you say who's asking, get the hell out of here, and you're just, "Am I afraid?" And it's like, all right, so fine, here is how you stand deliver his face your life. "I'm Richard, how can I help you?" And he's like, "Well, I have a problem." It's like, oh boy.
Of course you do.
Of course you do, exactly. This is getting worse. And he says, "Well, okay." I say, "You have a problem, how can I help?" And he's like, "Well, those grapes you bought last year that you thought were Mr. So-and-so's? Those weren't Mr. So-and-so's, they were this guy's grapes. And Mr. So-and-so was oversubscribed, and he told you he was selling you his grapes, but he then switched and bought my grapes and sold my grapes to you." And at first I'm just like, you know what? F Mr. So-and-so.
So, yeah.
But on the other hand, you know, you bring like 8 thoughts in half a second. On the other hand, like it's so good. Like we just tasted it. It's so good. And so I'm thinking this silently, and Carl's thinking the same thing. And then the guy keeps talking, and he says, you know what, this year, the same thing was going to happen. Mr. So-and-so promised you his grapes. But he was actually asking me to grow grapes for you, and we were going to do the same switch. And I was like, you know, that... And I said, yeah, and so now what? And he's like, well, it turns out he wasn't oversubscribed, so the grapes you got from him were actually his grapes. But all these grapes I grew for you, I'm left holding the bag. And you're just like, oh my God, like you're standing here eating crow and like saying you were going to dupe us, but now you're stuck with all this stuff that you want to sell us.
It's a different salesman approach. Yeah.
I'm like, well, man, we're in. But, you know, it was really delicious. I mean, we're in as in we have our fruit in. We don't like, you know. And I don't know if we need any more. And he's like, look, just come for a ride. And we're just like, all right, you get in a stranger's car. Isn't that the first rule our mothers taught us?
Who just says he has a problem,
Stranger danger. Like, so, but whatever. He's like, look, it's 5 minutes away. So we hop in the ute, as they call it, and we get in the ute, take a left, and basically, you know, that's 3 lefts. Now you're facing back where you were, and it's a kilometer away. And we pull in, and there's 153 olive trees, and then there's like 200 meters of bamboo, and then a bunch of cactus and dead fruit trees. And you come to this amazing little, it's 6.6 hectares, so 12 acres of these ancient Grenache vines that look like bonsai trees, and everyone's unique. It was on a trellis, a 20-inch trellis, which I think was what was the style in the 1860s in the Barossa. Fell over, so they were probably abandoned for a period of time. Now they're finding their way up. They've layered themselves, and it's an amazing garden. And we get out, and
with white beach-like sand.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like Waikiki. I mean, it's insane, or maybe Lanikai.
Lanikai, the powdery.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
yeah. And you're just like, wow. And so we got out of the car, and in what could have been a fatal mistake, because I didn't speak to my wife, I said, well, this is interesting. How about we just buy the vineyard? Like, I had no idea, like, what it would cost, how we'd pay for it, how Carla would regard this, but it fell out of my mouth after spending all these years there and literally being a kilometer away and having no idea this vineyard even existed. And the people we worked with, there are 6 generations in the Barossa, they didn't even know it existed. Like, it's like, it was this little hidden thing, and pure magic. So, I said this, and the guy said, well, he was taken aback. He's like, I just farm it. I have a contract for 2 more years, and I can introduce the old Italian guy. He wants to sell it because he's getting old. But I have a contract. And he's like, well, I'll buy you out of the contract. I still have no idea how we're going to pay for this. But why not? Just go for it and see what happens.
Yeah.
So long story made short, we bought him out of the contract. 36 hours later, we're in the old shed on the property, writing this out on, an old waiter's dupe pad, where you stuck the car. You're not old enough for this, but there was a piece of stuff you stuck between it, so it made the, a double.
And didn't imprint below.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like an old ditto machine or something. What was that piece called? It was like an ink that stuck on a piece of plastic that you stuck between 2 pieces of paper, so you had doubles, right? I don't know. So anyways, we write the whole deal out, I, Samuel Casciarelli, I, Richard Betts, and Carl Betts, blah, 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 for the sum consideration of X plus half a ton a year until you die that you can just have and make wine for yourself. And because he wanted to keep making wine, I was like, of course, man, like, we're so honored to be the custodians, like, please, like, we'll give you grapes. And so Sammy kept picking grapes until he passed away last year, which is sad, super sad. But we're honored to carry it on. And
wow, that's beautiful, though. Yeah, that's super cool.
So this vineyard is, the vines were planted somewhere 1860 to 1880. They're own-rooted.
It looks like...
He mentioned that there's 12 acres. Some of it, I think they've replanted over the years, like in the 90s or something like that, or 70s or something. But then there was 4 acres that you're now planting.
So we have 11 acres of the original stuff.
Okay.
From, it looks like 1867, and we have a friend in the surveyor's office who found the original documents. It looks like it's the 20th land grant. period in
Wow.
South Australia. Like, it's crazy business that it's this old. So this is it, and so we have those 11 acres. It's 10.5 acres of the old stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There were another 2 acres. So if we switch from hectares to acres, so we got 11. Then we got 2 that were planted by Sammy in 1992. So that makes them now almost 30 years old, on their own roots. And so whatever, you got 2 acres of that. And then the remaining 4 acres were all those olive trees and bamboo. And so we cut it all down.
Mm-hmm.
The olive trees, as romantic as that sounds, they're a terrible idea in the Barossa. It's too hot. They take a ton of water. Yeah. It's actually environmentally irresponsible. Right. So we cut them down. We push them in a pile.
I told you 3 times not to do that.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I should have listened. Sorry, Uncle.
Sorry, Uncle.
Uncle. Yeah.
But here's the thing.
But wait, we then several 12 months later had Burning Man Barossa. The pile of 150 olive trees.
Wow.
Think about that.
That's cool.
Was gigantic.
Wow.
Bonfire, s'mores.
So totally. So Australia wasn't quite hip to all the great grower champagne. Sorry, Australians, but you left all this great shit at Imbibo, who's also our distributor there. So we got all these amazing magnums of this stuff, and then we lit the tree pile on fire. It burned for a week, and we just raged. It was super fun.
That's dope.
It was super fun. So we had Burning
Chuck
Man
is
Barossa.
like, what is this man of burning? What is this?
It's a party in Nevada.
He said, "You're fired."
You're fired.
So here's the thing that, to bring this in full circle, because that's why when we picked them up, I was telling Carla, you guys found your dream. Because here's the reality is that Chateau Reyes, will there be another Chateau Reyes? Will there be another Costa Rica Corton Charlemagne? Will there be another, and we can go on and on. These legendary, will there be another Kalen Cellars? Will there be another, there's these iconic wineries that for whatever reason changed the game, and there won't be another winery like that for different reasons. And even you look at Burgundy, people talk about Rouleau and, great, hard to get stuff. And then Arnaud comes along, and the problem is he didn't inherit vineyards. So now he's buying vineyards at today's prices. So now he can't charge down here. He's got to charge right out of the gates.
So everybody.
Like this. So that
brutal.
happens in Châteauneuf-du-Pape. That happens in Bandol. That happens in all these different places because the lands are essentially shrinking, the available lands. You know what I'm saying? So to find a piece of land that has something very interesting and unique to say in today's world is a hard thing to do, and especially with a grape variety that you see has world-class potential or world-class, being able to stop somebody and just shake them and make them think about wines differently. It's not an easy thing to do today. Loire Valley, Beaujolais, it's all being gobbled up. And so, and especially at today's prices, it's not possible to create something, that's reasonable in price. So we can't go back. So these two have discovered that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you can see it in the wine because when you look at what the Riza block does, it's darker, it's more masculine, it's more, I don't know what the word is. It's got more, but without being heavy. It's still got the loveliness and the alluring quality, just a little more mysterious, a little more savory, a little more provocative, I think. And so it's so interesting to see the involvement. So we went from super light colored, and I think the wines are still light colored, but it's changed now. It's a new chapter. And it's just by uncovering the special parcel that if you look 360 degrees, it's back to what they originally set out to do. After all these years of searching, they found their spot. They found a thing that
awesome.
completes
Full
the
circle.
cycle.
Yeah.
And then they control it now. They control the winemaking, the grape growing, et cetera, et cetera. So they can nurture this thing just as like raising your own child.
Yeah.
So
it means you have to deal with the good, bad, and the ugly too.
So, but it's still a 360 degree journey. End of a journey. Actually a new beginning.
Yeah.
to fulfill that dream. I think this is really this
Passion
is that wine.
project. Yeah.
So that's why I encourage all of you. It's not necessarily easy to find because a real specialty wine store is going to have to champion a wine like this because it's not going to.
But it's
fly
there.
off the
It's
shelf.
available.
Yes, and
Just
so
find it. Take the time.
It's worth checking
it's
out,
worth
especially
it.
if you like
Yeah.
Pinot Noir, or you're looking for a red wine for Hawaii's climate and all the barbecue foods and all the different kind of foods we
it's
have
perfect.
here. Here's a wine for you. I would recommend you stick it in the refrigerator for 8 to 10 minutes before you serve it, and then pop the cork and enjoy. So this is the Sushi Set Grenache, and the one we have is 2015. And again, where I bought this bottle from was our field in Kailua. Okay.
Awesome.
So Richard, now we segue onto the partner of this Sucette, and it's called Nichon. And this is the grapes for this wine comes from nearby as well.
Right across the street, same vineyard as the 2015.
Okay.
Yep.
And so these, Ariana, are 60 to 65-year-old vines, roughly. They're still own-rooted. It's planted in sand.
Yep.
Let's see. The first vintage, you had 20% Sauvignon Blanc. So this vintage is 10% Sauvignon Blanc, I believe, the 16.
Yep.
And it's
Semillon.
yes, no, it's 10% Sauvignon Blanc and 90% Old Vine Semillon. The Sauvignon Blanc is more like 25-year-old vine, something like that. And it's barrel fermented, 6 months on the lees, and then 12 months in old French white Burgundy, wine barrels, correct?
Yeah, same ones we used for Sucette. That's vintage. Yeah. So French oak, but they've been used once. So you take out. So it's the same thing I use in the tequila, actually.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
So does the barrels come from Burgundy or Bordeaux?
Burgundy. Oh. Yeah. So all the great Coopers in Burgundy, and there are plenty of people that want to have a whole bunch of brand new oak on their wines, be them white or red, every year, which means there's it's generally readily available for guys that don't want to have a bunch of new oak on the wine, but instead, and it depends on your varietal. It's not a knock on the entirety of new oak, but yeah.
Is this something that you have a long lease on in terms of getting the grapes?
Handshakes, man.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Barossa. And by the way, if you want to start something in Barossa today, like there's never been a better time because they picked a fight with China, and what Chinese foreign minister said, if you want China to be the enemy, we'll be the enemy.
Wow.
I mean, I wouldn't pick a fight
Cully,
with that
let's go,
person.
Barossa.
Yeah. So, there are these gigantic Australian wine companies, pick them, the most famous, that were selling more than the majority of their wine in China, and now they're not selling any. So, A, that means you just see a whole bunch more like creatively sold around the rest of the world. But B, I had a call down there this time yesterday, and all the grape contracts are being canceled. Which this is what sucks about big wine. It's like they push the growers around, and the growers are these old families, and this is their income. And, and they're already like, okay, we paid you, whatever, $3,000 a ton for this last year. This year, things are terrible. Now we're going to pay $400 a ton. Yeah. It's like, wait, what? Like we had a contract and we were going to deal with this, and they're just like, sue us. No family's can afford to do it, let alone.
Yeah, and that's all they know, right? That's their legacy. That's what they want to keep
it's their
doing.
Life.
Yeah.
It's their income. It sucks. And
It's
now,
not
and then
only
as
in
of yesterday,
Australia.
they said we're going to pay you nothing. And it's like, wait, so hey, look, if you want to get into Australian wine, you can't get there now, thanks COVID. That includes us. Can't get there, which is enormously depressing. But that's another topic.
That's a plain subject.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that later. But
it's
Ariana, that's not only happening in Australia. If you look at all these wildfires in Oregon and California, the wineries are reneging all the grapes. So all these farmers, they're stuck with nothing.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's a terrible.
It's
I don't
really
want to
terrible.
be into the negative. Let's just go back to this wine. So
Yeah, let's do it.
This wine is intentional.
Yeah.
Okay, it's intentional. It's not some dream. It's not some. This is intentional. And when I was growing up in this industry, I'm significantly older than Richard. When I was growing up in this industry,
And I just
industry-
turned
Uncle.
50. Oh my God.
No, we're not talking about IQ now. We're talking about age. So anyway, there was classics, right? When we were growing up, Bankers. And so, of course, Chardonnay, which is still very popular. But you could make a big case for Australian Semillon. And then there was some California versions like that from Kalen, that were absolutely standout. Chateau Haut-Brion Blanc in Bordeaux. So, Semillon, it's just hard to find good Semillon.
Yeah.
So that's why this wine is intentional. It's just he saw a rough diamond or diamond in the rough, and he polished it, and he did his magic with the winemaking. Brought a worldly edge to it all. It's barrel fermented.
For me, Semillon,
contact.
Yeah, sometimes gets a bad rap for being like heavy or like
It
too
can
viscous.
be, though. It can be.
But this has buoyancy.
Thank
I
you.
think the 10% Sauvignon Blanc, first of all, freshens it up and gives it energy.
Is that
but
also the sand?
The sand.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The sand gives it more civility, and it's not so thick and unctuous. Semillon can be unctuous. So the combination of the sand and then the vitality and energy that the 10% Sauvignon Blanc adds, I think this thing is uplifted. Plus, there's no malolactic in this wine.
Nope.
And it's just aged in old oak. Again, white, old French white oak. And it's just, if you look at it, it's not oaky. But it's rounded because of the oak. It's got texture because of the oak. It's got length because of the oak. The slow
It's just there as a frame. It's not there to be a major
Exactly.
player in flavor.
And so to your generation, if you want to understand what Semillon can be and why it was so popular, why it was such a big thing in Bordeaux during my age, and that's changed, here's a perfect example of one that you should try so you can understand what Semillon
Potential.
can be.
Yeah.
Just like the first wine, what Grenache can be. That's what these two wines create. It creates imagine possibilities.
And where does the name Nichon come from?
So Nichon is French for délocatage.
Because Suzette also has kind of a raunchy one too. Yeah.
So I just told you Nichon is a French word for a French word, which was me dodging it, and I even said the second French word wrong, which is décolletage. But so Suzette means lollipop or to suckle. There's a dirtier version still. Mind you, we called the whole wineries an approach to relaxation, so you figured out. And
That's relaxing. Yeah.
Yeah. and Nichon is this is an abstract of Anita Ekberg. And if you don't know who Anita Ekberg is, you should look her up.
She's part of the Supremes, right?
No, she's definitely not. She was Federico Fellini's muse, and with Marcello Mastroianni in all those amazing Italian movies in the 50s. And anyways, it's fabulous. So this is a small piece of a still from the movie when she's in the Trevi Fountain, etc.
That's cool. So where did you get the name An Approach to Relaxation? Like, how did that come up?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I wanted to name the winery The Waffles. The Waffles. I mean, I love waffles. I love waffles. Who doesn't love waffles?
Who doesn't love waffles?
And can't you imagine like being in a restaurant saying, "I'll have the waffles"?
Yeah.
Like, this makes all the sense in the world to me. But I only get one vote.
Carla's like, no, Vito.
Carla's like, no, maybe, come on. We can't. You've had wineries. Like, this is my first. We can't do this. So anyways, the waffles got voided. But, on the same magazine that these lips are taken from and blown up, there was a tagline that said "An Approach to Relaxation." We're like, that's amazing. So we contacted them. It's in the public domain because that saying and these lips are probably, oh my God, maybe almost 70 years old. It's been a long time since that was put out there, and 50 years is the number. We contact them anyways because trademark fights are stupid and stealing's
don't
dumb
want to
too.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, hey, this is what we're thinking about. Do you mind? And they're like, it's in public domain. Do whatever you want. Have a great time. Go your artist. I'm like, awesome.
You're like,
so
okay.
Thank you. So at the moment, it felt really smart when we started selling wine. People loved it, and they had to put it on their wine list. You're just like, wait a minute. I missed something here. I was a sommelier. I had to type those lists out, like bin 107, An Approach to Relaxation, Sushi Set Grenache. It's like, oh, should have been the waffles.
Hashtag the
Stacked
waffles.
against you.
Totally.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is where this all came from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I like that though.
Yeah.
So, Ariana, what do you taste in this wine?
For me, for the Semillon.
Yeah, I mean, have you had a full Semillon before, or largely Semillon based?
So, like I said, for me, the first thing that I noticed was the levity. It's delicate for what I misconstrued as what I think Semillon was, which was the honey equaling viscous. But for me,
lanolin, I always got from Semillon before, but it's not thick, it's not unctuous.
Yeah, for me, this still has like honey and honeysuckle,
minerality?
But it has the minerality, the lift, and then like the minerality coupled with a little bit of herbaceousness too. Really, really like lean citrus with the base note of the honey. Yeah,
it's got a lot of stones, like fruit stones, pits. I didn't
white
say this
peach.
wine's the pits. I just said it just has a lot of these unusual characteristics that you don't. It's not so obvious like you get from some Chardonnays or Sauvignon Blancs or et cetera, et cetera. It's just something very unique. So it's not to. I'm not encouraging you to try this wine because it's esoteric. I just think this is a really good wine. It's always for me, whether it's barrel fermented, wild yeast fermented, whether it's orange, sparkling, or black. The question I always ask myself, is it a good wine or not? That's the bottom line with all these wines. Is the wine good or not? Then how much would I pay for it? And lastly, what kind of foods would I consider having with it? So having said that, if you look at this thing, it has the weight of Chardonnay, but it's not Chardonnay-like in its aromas and its flavors. It's got wonderful intensity and concentration. It flows very evenly and seamlessly from beginning to end. It finishes unoaky, unalcoholic, unbitter. So it's like a tree. There's no branches. There's no oak. There's no alcohol. And it just flows so evenly and seamlessly from beginning. And it's a really interesting drink where your fourth sip is very different from your first sip. So I think that's why we bought this wine for Vino, is that I just think it's really good.
Yeah.
And for those people that, want a Chardonnay-like wine or something, this is an alternative for them to try to perhaps experience something different.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to like put words in your mouth, but both of your wines, there's something about the nose, like from right off the bat, like it's just like
He knows.
he knows.
He
I
knows.
mean,
He knows.
I always have the biggest nose in any room I'm in. Look at
You
this
haven't
thing.
met my husband though. Oh, you did meet my husband at Wine Speak, yeah.
So I make
He was the
things
only Chinese
to
guy there.
please this.
Fair.
He knows.
Yeah.
It's not. Okay, so now other questions about the.
No, I want to say something about
Okay.
my wine. Damn it.
Yeah.
No.
So So we did start with 80-20 in the first vintage, which was the previous vintage, 2015. 80-20 meaning Semillon, Sauvignon Blanc. And that was a learning from Terry Layton at Kalen Cellars, who really insisted that they need each other.
You haven't had the Kalen wines, have you?
Get excited.
I know, that's why he was talking about it. I was like, I need to try this.
No, Kalin.
It's the most
Kalen Cellars.
underrated California winery.
Absolutely.
Right up there with Scherer. And the Kalen Cellars Semillon is the best California white wine ever made.
Courtney and Cully, we got to find Kalen.
In this guy's opinion. But anyways, we got it. So this is actually an interesting point. You can't take a recipe from one place and apply it in another place.
Oh, yeah.
Like just because Reyes is 100% whole cluster doesn't mean we can do that in the Barossa Valley. Just because Terry is 80-20 Kalen, Sem de Sauv Blanc doesn't mean we can do that here. And it's just like you can't make a souffle in Aspen, Colorado at 8,000 feet altitude, bring it to Honolulu and expect the same recipe to work.
Yep.
You're going to have to make some changes for the thing to rise, not fall, and make a mess.
Even vintage to vintage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Vintage is different.
That's that riddle of, that annual riddle is what makes winemaking so compelling.
Right.
So anyways, blah, 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 blah. We got through the first vintage, and the first vintage, 2015, in the end was 2 Sauvignon Blanc forward. And so we adjusted back to 90-10, and it was perfect. But the other thing about Semillon, and this is where Carla and I make a little bit of investment, it takes time to become what it's going to become. It never looks like what it's going to be.
Out of the
Even
gates.
and it takes like at least 24 months and sometimes 10 years.
She's an interesting girl. She wants to change up. Yeah.
Yeah. So we hold on to it. You make it, you bottle it, you hold on to it. And then when it starts to smell like this, once you do it a few times, you can extrapolate and know that will go over there. Mm-hmm. But this doesn't look anything what it looked like when we made it. And so learning that riddle, that's really a fun thing. And the point I really want to say about Semyon, which is completely unrelated to what I just said, is that it's great with spicy food.
Oh.
And I would have never imagined this. And this is another Terry Layton-ism from Kaylin. He's like, it's great with spicy food. And Carla and I are like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, come to Livermore. We're going to go to Uncle Yu's and eat dynastic Chinese cuisine. I was like, dynastic Chinese cuisine? What is that? So we go out there and we eat these crazy lobsters, all this spicy stuff. You know, I love spicy things. We're starting a hot sauce company. Another story. And we drink this Semyon with it, and it works. You know, you drink Chardonnay with spicy food, and the oak gets in the way. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
It hurts more, you know. And you drink this with spicy food, and it's just like, I got this. It's a fascinating thing. So please drink Semyon with spicy food.
Oh, interesting. I like that because I was thinking, you know, Chuck always talks about food and wine pairings, and Michael makes a super simple poached chicken, and just with like, he exchanges different types of herbs like lemongrass or basil and things like that. And it's not spicy by any means, but I see the versatility that could potentially go on with that, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, because he's just like simple like chicken stock rice and the poached chicken Vietnamese style kham gai, but it's very not spicy. But it's interesting to play in the sense of like some sort of Asian sensibility there.
Totally.
Yeah.
We make the Singaporean chicken rice.
Oh, yeah.
Super intense chili sauce. Like, we've got that so dialed.
Yeah, so Michael's mad at me because I'm a bad Korean, so I can only handle kimchi, and that's about it. So I'll have, like, kimchi on the side, but
Wait, what?
Yeah, I'm a bad Korean. I can't do spice.
No spice?
Yeah.
You're bad human.
I second, third, fourth. I mean,
I'm
we
messing
got
around.
No,
Spicy food's a gift.
Yeah.
Hello, unanimous.
No, he's always like, "Are you actually Korean?" Like, I'm like,
Oh, we're not talking race, just human. Just what kind of human are you? You know. So
Spicy or bust.
spicy or buzz.
We'll work on it.
I'll work
we're
on
here
it.
for a while.
So this is
Slowly
the
but
first
surely.
time. This is the first time you've had the Semillon.
Yep.
Okay. I just want you to remember this wine because you can use this to measure others by.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Wow.
There you go.
That's
so
awesome.
kind.
2016 Nichon Semillon.
From
There you
approach to relaxation. I love it. Love it.
The
Perfect.
newest project that I kind of just am only finding out about now that Richard is spearheading is called Tequila Komos.
It is.
So
And how beautiful is that bottle? That's
Thank you.
gorgeous.
Thanks. We have grand ambitions in terms of how to
it's
make
porcelain, first of all.
it. It is porcelain.
And then maybe you can explain what these little embossments are.
Yeah. I'll give you a little bit more of a backstory, you know, if that's great. But so my partner, Joe, partner and brother, I love him, was coming through Amsterdam, and we were sitting on my rooftop.
He lives in Amsterdam.
I do live in Amsterdam. I live in Hawaii right now, but my home is in Amsterdam. And Joe came through, and we were sitting on the rooftop having a drink, and he's talking about like how there's no good tequila in Europe, which is a whole chicken and egg thing, right? And we don't need to go down that thing. But then I just left Sombra, my mezcal company, and the conversation shifted to, well, how, why does everyone who makes tequila make it the same way, talk about it the same way? They all sing the same song. It gets so boring. There's no differentiation there. There's like, then you have to think of all kinds of interesting gimmicks to sell it, and that's like super boring. So we thought, well, how do you enjoy tequila, and how do you enjoy tequila? And I mean, I love chips and guacamole.
Yeah.
I sometimes wear a sombrero, and I can sometimes enjoy a mariachi band. But those things never happen when I'm drinking tequila. They don't. Like, I'm at the beach, or I'm in a club, or I'm by a pool, or if I'm lucky, I'm on a boat, or in a friend's home, or in a fine restaurant.
More realistic type things. Yeah.
And kind of it's always like when things are right and things are good, and so it's kind of this aspirational.
The highs in life, like the nice nature sometimes, and just
exactly.
I like that.
And so we thought, well, what if we like let that inform let the occasion inform the production. And so this is how we got into this whole thing. And so what that means is if we term that like that good lifestyle is this Mediterranean lifestyle, you could call it Hawaiian lifestyle, what have you, but we call it a Mediterranean lifestyle and of course that's winemaking. And so it allowed us to bring to bear on this process all of the winemaking that we know about and been through obviously for a couple decades and then some. So the idea is make what I like to drink, make what Joe likes to drink. Turns out we like to drink the same thing, so that's why we're friends. But to think about the production in a way that's never been done. So of course, if you're going to make tequila, I'll make this really short. But if you're going to make tequila, you got to make it in tequila. It's like if you make champagne, you have to make it in champagne.
Yeah.
Same story. So we make it in the town of tequila. And the first step is make a great Blanco. So it means like agave from all the different areas. So you have all this information, highlands and lowlands come together. So you've got complexity.
You got an orchestra as opposed to the horn section.
You've got exactly, but you can totally screw it up at this point. Like, agave they're a big ball of starch. They're like 150 pound, 70 kilogram ball of starch, which yeast don't eat. And we need the yeast to eat it to turn into alcohol. So you have to turn to sugar, and how you turn to sugar, there's lots of ways to do this. And, I hope people pay more attention to this. We're paying so much attention to organic foods or local foods, but no one thinks about like how that extends to other elements of their life. And like, you can turn that starch to sugar with basically a rice cooker, which I like rice out of rice cooker, but I don't like agave out of a rice cooker.
Steam.
Yeah, so it's steam and pressure. Yeah. You can also use something called a diffuser, which is chemical conversion.
Right.
You basically, spray with a sulfuric acid sort of solution, and it takes agave of indiscriminate age and turns them into a fermentable sugar. And it's very interesting to me. So roast the thing in a volcanic stone oven, the way it's always been done, right?
Yeah, traditional. Yeah.
Exactly. And then from there is where it starts.
So you caramelize it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like agave syrup that you make margarita with, So that comes from this.
Yeah.
So roasted agave. From there, you juice some, ferment with native yeast, blah, blah, blah. Not to say it's native, but because it takes longer. And then you develop flavor.
This is native yeast?
This is native yeast ferment. Yeah, exactly. And then from there, you distill it. And how you distill it is another choice. And we don't have to do the whole thesis on distillation, but you can do it industrially or you can do it artisanally.
You're doing artisanal.
Of course.
Yeah.
So pot still, copper pot stills, do it twice. After that, you have a great Blanco tequila. But, there are a couple other great Blanco tequilas, and, that's not whatever. We want to keep going and just like really figure out how to make it something special. So we put
just like what he talked about the Grenache, you figure out and you unravel
the
it.
tinkering.
That's what he did.
Yeah, well, there's no unraveling with the tequila. So it was unraveling with the wine, but then applying those lessons to the tequila. Like, this has never been done before.
Right.
So then most tequila is aged, if it's aged in barrels, aged in Jack Daniel barrels.
Right.
Because
bourbon barrels,
it's the largest source of used oak on the planet because they need new oak. Well, I hate American oak. I don't love America, but I hate our oak. It's vulgar. It's processed in a very intense way. And it's great for bourbon. It's not great for anything
showy.
else.
It's very
so showy.
obliterating.
It puts its footprint wherever it goes very harshly. Yeah.
And if you're
including Rioja.
Yeah. And if you're distilling corn or wheat, an annual crop, sure, use American oak. If you're distilling agave that takes 7 or 8 years to grow and you're only going to cover it up, that's an idiotic thing to do.
It's like having a real delicate onaga fish,
Yeah.
And you're covering it with all these heavy sauces and everything. Why use a fresh fish?
Why
like
bother?
That?
Yeah. Fry it at that point. Like, what's the point? I like panko, but the point is like
that's a crummy thing to say.
It is man. You are so good with the puns. It is insane.
The dad jokes.
Totally. Wow. Yeah. So anyways, blah, blah, blah. This is where we borrow from here. So those same old white wine barrels, we use these here, age it for a year. But then, 12 months later, it's mellow. It has flavor. It's beautiful. It's also dark in color. And I mean, you guys live here, but, I don't see a whole lot. I mean, I'm also on the beach a lot, but I don't see a whole lot of brown alcohol consumed during the day.
Right.
No. Yeah,
around
you're
the
right.
water. You just don't.
Yeah. Why though? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I say white on.
Oh man.
That's the spirit.
Whoa. Are these recycled jokes or is he really this quick? They're recycled.
His son is over
You're
there
getting
like
dubbed in by your own fam dog.
Oh my God, man. I believe in recycling, okay?
No, but that's super. If you're thinking about the Mediterranean lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
You want something easy drinking for the beach. That's what it is. It's not going to be the dark spirits.
Totally.
Yeah.
And no hangovers.
And no.
Which I'm not here to guarantee. I'm not guaranteeing this, but I can tell
that's
you my
on
own
you.
experience.
That's your
My
responsibility.
own experience is that so we take it out of the barrel, you put it through charcoal, takes out the color, also takes out the congeners. Congeners, good word to know. Those are things that give you a headache. And
Now understand he's 18 years old. And
Thank
look,
you.
See what the conjurers did?
Yep, they make me smile.
Okay, so then you have it's been aged in old French oak barrels for 12 months.
12 months.
And then you do
Then we put it in the charcoal.
right.
Then we put it in Greek amphora,
So
another winemaking steel.
So the charcoal, you take out color and impurities.
Yeah, congeners.
Right. And so then you take another step that you learned from winemaking, which you can explain.
Yeah, so it's a process that in winemaking is called micro-oxidization, which is it's kind of a no-no actually in winemaking because you're hastening the aging process.
Right.
And that makes, to me, a lot of sense that it should be a little bit of a no-no in winemaking because unless you're making wine to be drunk tomorrow, and I don't make wine like that, but I don't knock it either, but it's not what we do. But wine is still somewhat fragile. Oxygen is the enemy. To a certain degree, you need a little bit. That's why we use oak instead of stainless steel. But if you get too much,
Yeah.
So micro-ox in wine takes the wine and pushes it to this very open place. And if you don't grab it right then, it's going to potentially have some problems. Spirits are different. So they're very fragile at the outset. You have to make sure that the primary ingredients are pristine. But once it's become a spirit, you can do some things with it and you still want to treat it gently. But oxygen in the case of a spirit, what it does is it gives it a palate impression of, it increases girth on the palate. And it makes
rounds it out, kind of?
Rounds it out.
Yeah.
And so
Makes it a little more smoother, maybe.
more smooth and gives an impression of sweetness,
yeah.
which is amazing, all from oxygen. And so we do that in these Greek amphora, which are these big clay pots that we have made in the Republic of Georgia to the northeast of Greece.
Wow, that's cool.
They're lined with beeswax, which isn't
It's a different business up there.
Yeah, it's the bee's knees. So it doesn't mean it's still hypoallergenic. Don't worry. But it means that it's inert. So it's not picking up flavor from the clay, but it's a perfect place to tumble it and take on this oxygen, positive oxygenation.
So just periodic tumbling?
No, it's like deliberate and consistent for between 12 and 48 hours.
So every
here
12
I'm giving
or
away
48
all my
hours.
secrets to everybody else, but yeah, I don't mind. It's fine. Go for it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so it changes it dramatically. There's a thing you may have heard this at a certain point. You talk to old distillers, and they'll open an older bottle and oh, this is softer because it's had time to marry to the glass. Well, there's no such thing as marrying to the glass. What is that? It sounds romantic, this euphemism. But what's actually happening is that there is air passing through the cork, and it's just the same thing I've been talking
Bottle
about.
age, yeah.
Totally. But in a spirit, you go and you buy, you pick it, whatever it is you're going to buy, you expect it to be the same every time, which is ultra hard to pull off, and B, you expect it to be ready to go. We're not talking about oh, do I buy
You
this
want to be
wine?
able to pour that night at the party.
Yeah, exactly. And so, if you're going to spend $120 on an ultra luxury bottle of tequila, it better be ready to go. And frankly, I want to put my best foot forward. I want people to be like, "Oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever had." I always want to hear that. I'm egotistical like that. And,
But you just want to put pride in what you're doing.
Yeah. I was trying to be self-deprecating, but no. Ultimately, we're in the hospitality
Well, it is a good
industry.
tequila. I'll give you that,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Benson. It's really good.
Hey,
Thank
she's
you.
had too much to drink. Cut her off.
No. Here, let's keep going. Cheers. Thank you.
Oh, man.
Cheers.
She's normally
Cheers.
very quiet.
Yeah,
Okay, so
all the time.
Richard, tell us what you smell and taste in this thing. What you experience.
Yeah, that's
and
a
then
great
Ariana,
question.
then your turn next.
So for me, when we build this, I want to. So there's a lot of pieces, and some of them I haven't even told you about. But when I make this, we want to build something that's above and beyond everything else, elegant, and drinkable.
Refined.
But, you could just distill something 7 times and give it a bunch of oxygen and it would taste like nothing and feel like nothing.
But it would lose grit.
It'd be so stupid.
Yeah.
It wouldn't taste like anything. Part of what we're doing with everything that I think all 3 of us drink is we want to travel. You want to have a sense of place.
Yeah.
You want to know it comes from somewhere and it's rooted in, a geography and a geology and a history and a cuisine and a people.
There's a feeling there. Yeah.
And especially with COVID, like we want to take a trip and you can't get on a plane, so you got to do it with a bottle of something. So make it elegant, but have it be packed with information. And so, when we build this, we want to have all these different layers, and it's an orchestra or it's a chorus. It's not a solo. So when I smell it, the first thing I still smell is the agave, and that's really important.
True to
me.
form. Yeah.
So, I smell the agave. There's a certain green, and I mean, think of the color green. Don't think of unripe, not even like that can, but I can smell something that reminds me of a plant, and it's pretty. There's a spiciness to the nose, not to the palate. There's kind of a honeyed, rich aspect, and that comes from roasting that green plant.
Caramelization.
Yeah, so you can smell the agave, which is first and foremost. I get shadings of vanilla, so that's the white wine barrels, the French oak, but they're just shadings. It doesn't run it over.
Yeah. It's not the main focus of the thing. It's a harmony of things.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'd say it's also floral, and there's sort of some spicy, like brown baking spiciness to it, which I like a lot. So these are the things I smell, and it makes me want to drink it, which I'm going to do, right? And then that's the thing, you don't get that, you don't get tequila face. That thing that we all
I need my lime right after. You don't get
exactly.
that. Yeah,
We're saving limes.
Yep.
We're saving limes,
guys.
Yeah, exactly. Save the lime. You don't need a lime. You don't need the salt. So yeah, no, I mean, it should feel good. And
you could taste that. You could feel the oak in your palate too.
Yeah, you can.
Well, for me, how that translates is
Fills
that
up the middle.
Yeah,
It does.
also has an oomph, but also he was talking about translating sweetness without it being residual sugar heavy.
Exactly.
So I have that roundness on my palate and it feels there, but I'm not tasting the sugariness of it. Yeah.
Exactly.
If you look, the oak fills up the middle and towards the finish.
Yep.
So instead of you don't notice the alcohol as much.
Yeah.
It just kind of integrates right there, and then
Very seamless.
when you look at the Amphora effect, it rounds out the middle and it rounds out the finish.
You know what else rounds out the middle? They'll be the first. No, this is a serious comment. We don't tell anybody, but our industry peers this. So you're the first consumers in on the secret, which means you have to bear with me. So we don't put it on the label. We say a hint of the Mediterranean, right? It's right there. Inspired by the Mediterranean. There's salt in here.
Yeah.
And that's not to say right? Everybody, you're thinking he's crazy. I'm not into salty tequila. And you're right. Nobody is. No one would have any idea what
You
to do with it.
mentioned that,
If
that's why
I
I know.
said,
Yeah.
if I told you we put salt in it, that's actually this particular, relief here
You
on the
mentioned
front.
that earlier.
But
yeah.
it's not salty.
You
Not salty.
You can't taste
Yeah.
it. You never know it's in there. If you taste a dish that you're eating and you taste the salt, well, it's over salted. And you're oh, it's too salty. If you taste food, it tastes great. There's salt in it, but you never think of the
There's
salt.
salt in this, but it doesn't assault your palate.
It
Yeah.
never
Okay.
assaults your palate because the salt and battery are bad. But
It kind of gives umami there too, though. It
did.
has an extra layer of something.
so there's this interesting thing. I told you I wanted to make it graceful. And all agave distillates are acidic by nature. They're on the below 7 side of the pH scale. When you add salt, guess what? You head right back up towards 7. So it makes it easier. Again,
Smart. That's so
obviously,
smart.
I had a mezcal company. I like mezcal very much. But so much of it is so acidic. And that has to do with the length of fermentation. And we can nerd out on that another day. But that's the extreme example. But it doesn't matter how you do it. There's always some acid there. And when you add the salt, it brings it back to pH neutral or close to pH neutral. So it's more comfortable. And it also fills in the middle of the palate. So you'll have no idea it's in there. But it's also, I think of it as the bartender's MSG. Frequently, it's true.
I like that. Yeah.
Frequently, salt is in cocktails, particularly citrus-based cocktails, right? And
To
get
round
some nods
out,
over
yeah.
here. Ice.
The show.
A little bit of salt, the show, and then the citrus, and then the cocktail gets built, then it gets shaken, and then there you are. So, we're just shortcutting. I mean, of course, margarita is like still the most called for cocktail in America. And what's on the rim? Salt. So there's not, what goes in a bottle is literally the head of a pin, and the effect is profound, and you'll have no idea it's in there.
Wow.
I like that. So for me,
The
like
head of a pin. That's a.
It's shocking what
Wow.
it changes.
And you missed the point. That's the whole thing.
Thank God.
I know. There you go.
no, but for real, like my friends are getting married, and like this is for me a really awesome wedding gift to look
you.
to. Like someone who wants some artisanal spirits and they want something that has a sense of place, like you said. That's for me like number one thing you should have on your bar cart as a good gift. That'd be
love it.
awesome. Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. It's abunai, which is Japanese for dangerous, so it's like dangerously smooth.
I love that. Well, Komos is Greek for dangerous.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Oh, that makes
Abunai.
sense. Abunai, yeah.
So we're gonna make some glasses, I think, in Japan with hopefully with.
Abunai.
Well, yeah. Anyways, we're gonna revisit this abunai idea. I have some other thoughts here.
That's cool.
But while we're here, because it's fun, this is look. I just told you about our grand ambitions to make this crazy, amazing tequila, and I think we've done it. At least again, I like it. So we wanted to put it in a beautiful bottle, and we didn't want to, mark it all up with branding, what have you, because we want it to be upcycled. So we spend all this extra money
To get a clean,
to put
wow.
3 layers of stuff in between the bottle and the label, so that you can pull these things right off, and in the end you just upcycle it, and it's it's its own piece of art. So
Courtney wants the bottle so bad.
well, Courtney, you just gotta empty it first.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah, this is
awesome.
really it. So this is the thing, and then you just have this piece of porcelain. Anyway, upcycle, save the planet, save the chucks.
That's beautiful though. Yeah. Save the limes. Hashtag save the limes.
Save the limes.
There you go, Kali. Thank you.
Thank you.
I feel certified now.
You're certified.
I
You're
feel
certifiable.
So while we have some time here, a little bit of time, I didn't address the Scratch and Sniff book.
Oh man, I thought you were gonna ask something else. This is
No,
great.
I'm not
This is
talking about
easy.
that.
Oh, good. Please don't.
Okay,
That's all I talk about these days. It's too
I know.
much.
so let's talk about.
We're just here to
Scratch
talk about
and Sniff.
tequila and scratch and sniff,
Thank
folks.
goodness.
That's all we want.
Scratch and Sniff.
Yeah. So
That's a book that he released, and it went gangbusters.
4 of them now. The 4th one comes
Oh,
out on
really?
4/20 of this year. Can you guess what's the topic? I mean that. It's true.
I love
Tequila.
that.
No. The show, like dial them in here. So we did the Essential Scratch and Sniff Guide to Becoming a Wine Expert. Made New York Times bestseller list. That was amazing.
That was one of the first books when I told my friends I'm going to be a somm, they bought me a scratch and sniff.
I love
Scratch
that.
and Sniff book.
I
Yeah.
love it. So the whole, I think the 3 of us share this. The wine world gets better, and actually the world at large gets better when more people are drinking wine.
Yeah.
It makes you happy. It's part of a healthy life. So the idea with that is take a subject that's well loved but not necessarily well understood, and make it accessible and make it inclusive, and let everybody know their vocabulary is fine. There's no wine speak.
Yeah.
There's just
We're not trying to
apart from your
intimidate
conference,
anyone.
but
Yeah.
you know what I mean? There's nothing to be intimidated by. Just like you vote for who you vote for. You order your cheeseburger
You
the
like
way
it,
you
you
order
like
it.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that was the aim with that book, and it's now extended to whiskey and beer, and now on 4/20 it'll be cannabis. And so there is a Scratch Sniff cannabis book coming, and I'm
That's
proud
cool.
of that because it's a cool book and it's an interesting book, but I'm proud of it because we're donating 100% of my proceeds from here on out to eternity to a program I'm really emotional about called the Bard Prison Initiative.
Oh, yeah.
I read
yeah,
about that.
yeah, and so they're basically, buy the book because the money goes to a good place, and it basically puts college back in prison, which is where it should be, amongst other places. Yeah. So Scratch Sniff, make it easy, make it fun, and make it inclusive. That's a good motto for life, I think.
Inclusive is what it's all about at the end of the day.
100%.
You know what I mean? We have all this wineries with marketing budgets, and that's all fine and dandy. But at the end of the day, going back to the farmers and knowing them, and the wineries that maybe don't have the marketing budgets, and then going to the people who maybe aren't spending a lot of money on wine, but they just want to have something wholesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not about how much you spend on it, just like as long as
exactly.
you're drinking and enjoying, it's great.
Yep,
That's
I
all
love
matters.
that.
Yeah, me too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You should create another thing, maybe Komos or something, a spin-off, and do the proceeds go to old sommelier's home.
So
For the old guys.
Uncle
To
Chuck's.
Uncle Chuck's.
Uncle Chuck's. There's
that's
Chuck
what I'm
E.
trying to
Cheese's
tell
and
you,
Uncle
man.
Chuck's.
I graded you right when you were coming up.
No, never once.
Never
You were always this fabled grumpy dude. You were. So I'm actually totally.
His son is laughing extra hard on the side right now.
You were always like this scary guy, and even like super scary Fred was like, "Oh, wait till you see Chuck," and I never got to see you.
I was just talking to Ariana about that because I figured, because Greg Harrington says that a lot, and so does all these other people. I just was quiet. I wasn't grumpy. I never.
I
He's
wasn't
like,
there.
dot, dot,
I can't say. This is just what I hear. Rumors. Never
So
believe the
I'm
rumors.
the type of person that's like poker. I try to look at the people and try to understand how
You
they
have to
think and
understand
what's
that looks
happening.
grumpy when
totally.
you just stare at people.
Wow.
You give them that look, and they probably
Yeah.
I don't even want to speculate. Actually,
No, I was.
Now
Joe
you're just
Mello.
Uncle Chuck. It's okay. Uncle Chuck.
So anyway, Ariana, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
insight.
This flight has been amazing because in all of them I see a real intention,
Thank you.
a real
Thank you.
attention to quality as well. So
And he's thought it
appreciate
out, and he's executed. This is
Yeah.
all dreams that,
well, it's all
and
purposeful.
So,
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting because when you look at the first wine, the Grenache, it's been an involvement over considerable time to reach the sweet spot.
But he also is thinking
Lichon-
about consumers, and how are they going to consume the wine? You know what I mean?
So that's why, if you notice, again, as you recall, I don't go to wineries. I walk vineyards with people because then I can see how their mind works. So hopefully him telling the stories of the Grenache, the Nichon Semillon, the tequila, and also his book, Scratch and Sniff, you can understand how his mind works. And you can see it's a continuous evolvement. It just doesn't sit there and just keeps moving and moving and moving, and so that's Richard Betts in a nutshell. Richard, thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Thank you. Thanks
Always
for those
appreciate
kind
it.
words and those kind observations too.
No, it's the
means
truth.
a lot, Chuck.
Even though
Thank
you called me grumpy, I don't care, man.
I didn't call you grumpy. It was the candidates. I'm just reporting what they said. And thank
No,
you,
and-
Ari, for
and-
those kind words. It's
No,
really,
of course. You and Carla, power couple.
Yes.
Love it. Love
Thank
it.
you. Thank you.
So to all of you, thank you very much for tuning in. A toast to our buddy, Richard Betts.
Toast to buddies. All
Yeah.
of us.
To
There you go.
buddies.
There you
Cheers. Chin chin, everyone.
go. We hope you tune in next week. Until then, aloha, everybody.
Aloha.